Tribe, you've done it. You've gotten the country a banana. We're now 4 on a scale of 10, maybe 5, but let's assume we're at 4. When you say that the incumbent administration can prevent the leading opponent from running against him by simply asserting, he uses the term self-executing, by simply asserting that the candidate running against him has engaged in insurrection or rebellion. That's all. All you have to do is say it. Secretary of State then disqualifies him. Then you can, I guess, bring a case to court. Tell you, I've said before, I cannot represent Donald Trump in his criminal cases. I have a policy of representing people only once. But if this case were to get to the Supreme Court on the issue of the disqualification of Donald Trump, and I were asked by voters to defend their right to vote for him or against him, I don't think I can resist taking that case and confronting Tribe in front of the United States Supreme Court. We'll see if that ever happens. It would be 2 octogenarians. I'm 85 next week, and Tribe's probably 82 or something like that, debating whether 2 octogenarians can run against each other. We become a country of really old men, and I say men advisedly because there are too few women today in positions of authority. I wish there were more, and I wish there were more younger people running for president or having this debate. But remember, debate has been abolished in the United States. There are no more debates. Lincoln Douglas couldn't happen today. Half the country would say, we think Douglas is right, we don't want to hear Lincoln. The other half would say, we think Lincoln is right, we don't want to hear Douglas. What has happened to debate? What has happened to the great debates in this country that have basically been the hallmark of our democracy? You can't debate anymore, certainly on Martha's Vineyard. You can't debate if you say anything that is opposed to the political correctness of Chilmark. Nobody will debate you, nobody will talk to you, nobody will allow you to speak in the library, nobody will allow you to speak in the community center, in the local synagogues and churches. So that's where we come to. So I want to renew debate. So Larry, we've known each other for 50 years. We've argued with each other. We've agreed with each other on occasion. Let's debate this issue. You pick the time, you pick the location, you pick the moderator. I'm happy to have you pick the moderator. Let's just have a fair and open debate on whether or not the 14th Amendment allows secretaries of state and governors from the incumbent political party to prevent the leading opponent, the man who's trying to unseat the incumbent president, from running based on a self-executing statement that, that person has committed rebellion or insurrection. Debate me. Beat me on the merits. Let's not do any name calling. Let's respectfully debate each other. You can go first, you can go last, you can set the rules. All I want is an opportunity to have the American public hear differing views on this issue instead of hearing CNN over and over again make mistake after mistake, prediction after prediction that turns out false. Let's go back to the day. Remember when Bill Buckley used to have this great show on television? Bill Buckley was a great conservative. He called me his favorite liberal. And we would debate these issues. You can get them online. Dershowitz versus Buckley. We debated in front of, 2,000 people at Harvard University. It's called Firing Line. Yeah, Firing Line. It was his show. And, it has all that great music. I'm not going to try to sing it. But music from the Baroque period. And he was a great debater, and I think I was a pretty good debater. Tribe was a championship debater in college. So was I. So we would have 2 pretty good debaters with a lot of experience on constitutional law debating each other. Who would be the beneficiary? The American public would be the beneficiary. So, Larry, debate me. I challenge you. Debate me. Don't hide on CNN. Because CNN isn't a debate, it's propaganda. It's propaganda. Only one side of the issue is presented. They hire people based on what their pre-existing ideology is, and they don't present conflicting points of view. Neither does MSNBC. I have to tell you, to their credit, the 2 stations that I regularly appear on Newsmax and Fox, along with others, do present opposing points of view. In fact, I am the opposing point of view often on these shows because I'm not a Trump supporter. Whereas you show me too many people from CNN that are Trump supporters, you're not going to see much of that, or on MSNBC. But I don't care about the politics of it. What I care about is the Constitution. And how dare you, Professor Tribe, how dare you distort the Constitution by turning the 14th Amendment from having criteria designed to prevent people who fought in the Civil War from gaining office during the Reconstruction period. How dare you turn it into a preliminary impeachment process? That is, we can't impeach him once he gets into office because he's protected by the text of the Constitution, 2/3 vote in the Senate. So we will impeach him in effect before he ever runs by disqualifying him from running. You think that the framers of the Constitution were really that stupid and that naive to have such different criteria, different procedures before a person is elected president and after he's elected a president? No. They wanted very, very, very daunting criteria and procedures before a person can be elected. Now, let me make one final point before I get to letters. Let's assume, for argument's sake, that after a long, complicated debate, the audience rules in your favor 52-48. Let's assume that. It's not going to happen, but let's assume that. Do you think a close case like that, a controversial close case, which could easily go both ways, should be enough to prevent voters from voting for their chosen candidate? No. If you want to prevent voters from voting for their chosen candidate, you better have a constitutional argument that gets 95% of the vote, that is overwhelmingly clear. And even you, Professor Tribe, could not look me in the eye and tell me that the 14th Amendment is clear and unambiguous and deliberately provided no procedures. You essentially say that in one of your articles, but you know it's not true. The framers could easily have said, for the future, we now have a process, in addition to the impeachment process, for preventing a candidate from running. You have to charge him with this, that, or the other thing. You have to persuade the House of Representatives to disqualify him. Then that has to go in front of the Senate with a 2/3 vote with the Chief Justice of the United States presiding. That's what they would have done if they wanted to have a permanent process for qualifying or disqualifying all future candidates for president of the United States. They didn't have that. And the best you can win in the argument, and you're not going to even win that, the best you can win is that, well, it's ambiguous, it's a close case, maybe the framers possibly meant it to apply to future presidents without a trial, without an impeachment, without anything, just based on what a Secretary of State believes, subject to judicial review. Maybe you could persuade somebody that that's a possible interpretation. Possible interpretations are not enough to prevent millions and millions and millions of voters from voting for their candidate of choice. The ultimate check and balance in a democracy is the vote, and you're taking that away. Shame on you. Let's get to letters. Professor Dershowitz, this was an excellent opening statement. You remember my opening statement, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. If you're going to convict, you have to do this, that, and the other thing. One element you can add to this hypothetical is to imagine if all presidential elections in the future will be affected by your decision, and you have severely deterred candidates in the future from ever questioning results, and imagine that this action would also even mildly encourage those who would contemplate illegally influencing elections. What kind of a country would we live in? It's a very interesting argument. It's a little like what I've just said on the show. You have to think about the future. You have to think about the implications of what you're proposing. Again, if the tribe plan were to come into effect, believe me, it would be used by the opposing side. And we would have disqualification after disqualification, litigation after litigation, and the case would never, and the matter would never come to a conclusion. Elections would all be thwarted and distorted. people wouldn't accept the outcome of an election where the leading candidate has been disqualified based on the actions of a Secretary of State. Okay. Next question. Can you imagine being indicted and prosecuted for giving legal advice as an attorney? Well, that's happened. Eastman, who's being represented by one of the most brilliant lawyers in the world, my friend and colleague Harvey Silverglate, Eastman is essentially being tried in Georgia for giving legal advice. And Silverglate and his legal team will, of course, explore that issue and try to move to have his case severed from the other cases, because he's essentially charged with giving legal advice. If the legal advice was wrong, well, that's what happens when you give controversial legal advice. Every lawyer has given legal advice that may have turned out wrong. I'm very cautious. I never tell my clients you're going to win. I give them percentages and likelihoods, but anybody can be wrong. And to criminalize legal advice, no. All right, this was a fun one. If you close your eyes and listen, now everybody close your eyes and listen and tell me if you think this is correct. If you close your eyes and listen, you'll think Woody Allen is talking. Well, Woody's a friend of mine. We grew up just a few miles away from each other in Brooklyn. Yes, we both have Brooklyn accents. Yes, we both have eliminated the most extreme aspects of our Brooklyn accent. I don't say, hey, the do's and the does and all of those things. I don't talk like that. But, my accent is Brooklyn, just the way Chicago accents, and Philadelphia accents, and New Orleans accents. So Woody and I probably do have some accents in common. But I don't think you would actually think it was Woody Allen. I think both of us would be insulted. So I know a little bit more about law than Woody does, and he's a hell of a lot funnier than I am. So, when you listen to me, it's me, not Woody Allen. Okay. I like this one. You have balls of steel, Dershowitz. Well, nobody has balls of steel, but I try not to be pushed around. I've been tested in the last few years, as you know. For the first 75 years of my life, I never sued anybody and was never sued by anybody. Now I seem to be spending half my life defending myself against frivolous lawsuits. So far, I've done very well, and I hope to continue to do very well in defending myself. Spoken like a true defense attorney. This is reference to the opening argument. There are those of us outside of that narrow view who think that Trump is getting exactly what he deserves. Well, that's the adversary system. Of course I speak like a defense attorney. I am a defense attorney. I didn't pretend that I was making the argument for the prosecution. I said I was making the argument I would make as defense attorney. So yes, I'm speaking like a defense attorney. I hope I'm speaking like a good defense attorney. And defense attorneys don't often persuade everybody, and they don't often have the facts on their side. That's why we have prosecutors. That's why we have the adversarial process. And I hope the adversarial process survives this Get Trump posse. It's going to have a hard time doing so. If you deny Trump the time to prepare for his trial and put him on trial for a 95-page indictment with 18 co-defendants in 4 months and three weeks, no, there's not going to be any possibility of a fair trial. And I have to tell you, no reasonable defense attorney would accept that role. I wouldn't. I would say to the judge, Your Honor, what you're asking me to do is essentially like asking a doctor to perform open heart surgery with 2 hours of preparation. No, I need 8-9 months to prepare for this case. I have to find every possible witness that can testify. I have to check into the background of every witness who's testifying against us to make sure we know everything that we possibly can to cross-examine him. We need to have polls taken about the jury veneer. We need to have mock jurors listen to various arguments. That's the way you try a case. And I'm not trying a case with one hand tied behind my back any more than I would perform surgery with the right hand tied behind my back. So, no, that's not the way to try a case. Can the court convict a prosecutor by bringing the wrong case? No, and I made a slip of the tongue in my opening argument. I slipped and said conviction instead of acquittal, and then I said, well, why don't you convict the prosecutor? That was a mistake. No, don't convict the prosecutor. I don't want to over-criminalize anything. Just acquit the defendant is what I really meant to say. So I apologize for my misleading statement. Oh, this is such a nice email, but I don't wish it on him. But it's a nice email. If there were a way to directly ask God for something, and God would grant it, I would honestly, truly ask him to take away all the years that I have had assigned to be alive, to be given to you, Mr. Dershowitz, so you can live longer for many, many years ahead. You are a person who contributes to society a lot. Your mind is a great mind, Mr. Dershowitz. God bless you. I appreciate it very much, but I won't take a minute from your life. I will try to do as much as I can in whatever time the good Lord has allotted me, with the help of my excellent doctors and my wonderful wife and children who keep me alive. Okay. Again, this is a nice compliment. Professor Dershowitz is a perfect definition of classic liberal. I think that's true. Classic liberal, nonpartisan, classic liberal, libertarian. I am a huge fan of Dennis Prager, and Dennis has always spoken extremely highly of Professor Dershowitz. God bless you. Well, Dennis Prager grew up halfway between me and Woody Allen. He grew up in Flatbush. He went to Flatbush Yeshiva. I was turned down Flatbush Yeshiva because my grades in my yeshiva were so low. So I went to Brooklyn Talmudical Academy. But I remember Dennis as a high school student, and he has a phenomenal brother who is a medical ethicist and a medical doctor at Columbia Medical School, where my grandson is now intern resident. So thank you all for your wonderful, wonderful letters. And if any of you know Professor Tribe, please communicate to him my challenge, and maybe he'll accept. Wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be interesting? See you tomorrow.